At the time I started working on this video, I had recently watched all 3 seasons of Netflix's Sonic Prime for the first time. And wow, what a ride! This has got to be one of my favorite Sonic the Hedgehog experiences. There's a lot of things I want to talk about regarding this show, so allow me to get this stuff off my chest. Oh, and just a word of warning, if you haven't seen Sonic Prime, or you're watching it for the first time and haven't finished it, just let it be known that there are spoilers in this video. Alright, now let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is the animation. Holy moly, I love the animation! Especially the Sonic vs. Shadow fight scenes. I just can't get enough of that. I want to go through each frame and study it. It's just that good. One thing in particular I want to point out is painfully obvious, but bear with me here. This is a 3D animated Sonic series. Why is that important? Well, in the early days of animation, the only animation style option available was hand-drawn 2D. Nowadays, we have a plethora of different types of animation to choose from, and the fact that the creators of Sonic Prime decided to go with 3D computer animation is an important decision. What type of animation you choose to use for your project has a big impact on it, and I think going with this type of animation for Sonic Prime was the right decision. Now, I'm not saying that this show would have been bad if it were 2D animated, but to be totally honest, I don't think it would have had the same impact. Those amazing digital effects could have easily been drawn by talented 2D animators, sure, but I just don't think it would have created the same feeling. So yeah, I think CGI was the right way to go. One thing I didn't notice right away, but loved when I did notice it, was the level of cartooniness in the animation. Wait, is cartooniness a word? Well, it is now. Sonic especially had a ton of cartoony snappiness in his movements. At first I thought it was just because he's incredibly fast, but then I started noticing this same snappiness in other characters too. This cartoon was meant to be exactly that, cartoony. I think the reason I didn't notice the cartooniness was because it wasn't used in every single shot. There were many areas in which using cartoony snappiness would have killed the mood. Therefore, in those shots, the animators toned down the cartooniness and went more subtle. This kept the show from feeling like nothing but goofiness. Now don't get me wrong, I love goofiness, but Sonic Prime is more than what it may seem on the surface, and we'll get to that in a bit. Because there was a great balance of cartoony shots and subtle shots, this allowed the show to have a variety of moments that were funny, emotional, action-packed, relaxed, etc. This added depth to the show so subtly that I actually didn't think about it until after I finished watching the series. I want to talk about the storytelling next. A wise animator once told me that every story that can be told has already been told. Therefore, you must find ways to make the one you tell unique. If you can't think of a story similar to Sonic Prime, I've got one for you, Spider-Verse. I thought this multiple times while watching this show. Sonic Prime is basically the Sonic version of Spider-Verse. Traveling through different dimensions filled with different versions of the same people? Already been done before, so the writers of Sonic Prime had to find ways to keep the audience from feeling like they've seen something exactly like this before. One of the ways they did this was through Sonic's character development. This must have been an interesting thing to play with for a very specific reason. As I'm sure you know, when it comes to most stories, the main character is the one who goes through the biggest internal change. The main character goes on some kind of journey, learns a big lesson about life, and becomes a better person by the end of the story. When it comes to most Sonic stories, this rule is reversed. Most of the time, Sonic doesn't really go through any sort of internal development. He's already developed. Instead, he plays the role of mentor, inspiring other characters to change for the better. Now, there are exceptions to this, like the Sonic movies, and in this case, Sonic Prime. In Sonic Prime, Sonic does go through an internal change, which is unusual for him. I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense, because in life, just when we think we've got everything figured out, something causes us to lose our balance, so to speak. From that point, we must continue to grow and develop, learning a new lesson about life, becoming better as a result, until later on when once again we stray off the path, starting the process over. In this show, it seems like Sonic has forgotten the importance of friendship and how to appreciate the little things in life. When Sonic's big mistake kickstarts the entire series, over time he comes to realize the error of his thinking. Because of his own reckless actions, he lost the people who mean the most to him. The longer this goes on, he misses them more, he gets more serious about the situation, and he gets more desperate to save them. He begins relearning how to work with his friends and even his enemies. He also relearns how to appreciate the little things in life, like a moment to catch his breath, and how good food can make you feel brand new. By the end of the series, Sonic is so happy to have his life back to normal that his friends even point out that he's acting strange. This is when Sonic has finally gotten his life back on track until the next time he strays off his path. Because friendship is one of the main themes of this story, Sonic's interactions and relationships with the other characters are very important here. One of Sonic's most important relationships in this series is his relationship with Nine. It's also one of his rockiest relationships. Because Nine is a different version of Tails, Sonic treats him the same way he treats Tails, because to Sonic, Nine is Tails. However, like Shadow said, he's not Tails, he's Nine. Sonic keeps forgetting that Nine doesn't operate quite the same as Tails, which leads to major trust-shattering miscommunications that drag on right up until near the very end of the story. It seems that Sonic's rough relationship with Nine helps him realize how much he misses Tails, which will keep him from taking Tails for granted in the future. Sonic's relationship with Shadow is also very important. Even though they don't spend a whole lot of time together, this relationship still has a lot of impact on the story. By the time Sonic meets up with Shadow again at the end of Season 1, Shadow is the only person besides Sonic who actually knows who Sonic is and what's going on. In fact, Shadow actually knows more of what's going on than Sonic does, so staying on Shadow's good side was vital for Sonic's progression in the story. Sonic and Shadow's relationship in general is complicated to say the least. It seems like most of the time, all they do is disagree on everything and settle their disagreements with fistfights. However, when it comes right down to it, they can work together when they need to, and it seems that secretly they do have some level of friendship between them. It's obvious that Sonic cares about Shadow just like he cares about Tails, Knuckles, or Amy due to how scared he would get every time Shadow came close to dying. The same can be said for Shadow. When it seemed like Sonic wasn't going to live to see the end of the story, Shadow's face and actions showed genuine concern for Sonic, leading me to believe that Shadow doesn't hate Sonic like he says he does. When it comes to the other characters, it's all pretty much the same. Sonic has to figure out what makes each of them tick so he can learn to work with them and befriend them. Seems like he forgot to do that with Nine, which was rather interesting. As for the overall plot throughout the 3 seasons, I think it was clear and structured well. There wasn't a single moment when I thought, what's going on here? I don't get it. Yes, there were questions left at the end of each episode due to the cliffhangers, but I wasn't confused. The action and suspense kept me on the edge of my seat until the very end. I wasn't bored for a second. I'm not usually the kind of person who likes to binge watch TV, but this was an exception. I kept wanting to watch more, right up until the credits rolled at the end of the last episode. Like I said before, every story that can be told has already been told. This makes it hard to surprise audiences these days. However, I found myself being surprised several times while watching Sonic Prime. A lot of it had to do with the ever-changing villains. In one episode, the villain is Eggman, the next it's Thorn Rose, then before you know it, Knuckles the Dread is the new villain. The villain kept changing until Season 3, when Nine becomes and stays the villain throughout. Then one more time, surprise! Eggman is the villain again. Sonic Prime did an excellent job surprising me. I wasn't expecting so many unexpected things, and boy did I enjoy that. I think I'd better address the ending of Sonic Prime. When it comes to storytelling, there are 2 types of endings, closed endings and open endings. Most stories have closed endings. This means that there are no unresolved conflicts, no questions unanswered, and usually no audience members walking away unsatisfied. An open ending is the opposite. It will have unanswered questions and oftentimes at least one unresolved conflict, which leaves the audience wondering what happened next. Sonic Prime has an open ending. Honestly, I thought the art of the open ending was something no one used anymore, so seeing it used here was very refreshing to me. Not only was an open ending used, I think it was executed well. What's satisfying about this particular open ending is that the main issue is resolved. Sonic has his home and his friends back, and he's learned his life lesson for the week. What made this an open ending is some other details. For one, just as Sonic and his friends have begun to relax, something explodes in the distance and they run off to investigate. That's how the story ends. We don't know what caused that explosion. Eggman? We can only guess. There's also the question of what happened to Nine and the other characters after Sonic and Shadow returned to Green Hill. Did they disappear after everything returned to normal, or did they survive? Whatever happened to the Chaos Council? Did Nine get the life that he wanted? We don't know any of that either. Now the question is, why? Why would the writers choose an open ending rather than a closed one? Without asking them outright, we won't know that either. But here's my theory. In the world we live in today, where we can instantly get answers to almost everything at the touch of a button, we are spoiled. But the truth is, we don't always know all the answers, and that's okay. Sonic is likely never going to know what happened to 9 or the others, so why should we get to know? And as for the explosion, Sonic deals with stuff like this all the time, so we don't really need a 4th season just to make sure that he takes care of it. I think the writers chose to go with an open ending to remind those who watch it that it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to not have all the answers. After all, that's how life works. We're not going to know everything. We're not going to have all the answers. That's just something we need to accept. I'm not sure if that's what the writers were trying to communicate with this ending, but that's what I got from it. What I'm trying to say is I think the ending is exactly what it needs to be, and that it should get the appreciation it deserves. Now, I want to talk about the characters in Sonic Prime. The fact that these are Sonic characters is what drew me to this series in the first place, so of course there's expectations. There are certain things I want to see from certain characters, so let's talk about that. I already spent a lot of time talking about Sonic, so I'll be brief here. In this show, Sonic is, well, Sonic. He's exactly what I'd expect Sonic to be. He's cocky, but not annoying. He loves to have fun, so he often goofs around while fighting his foes by cracking jokes and making faces. I love the other side of his personality too. He puts others before himself and is willing to sacrifice everything he has, even his own life, for everyone, which I think is his best virtue. Honestly, I can't think of anything I didn't like about Sonic's portrayal in Sonic Prime. It was perfect in my opinion. This is really saying something because Sonic is my favorite character, which means my expectations for him were the highest out of all of them. As great as Sonic was, Shadow was even better. However, the frustrating thing is that I can't figure out why. All I can say is that every time Shadow was on screen, I got excited. I'm not sure what it was about him that made me love this show more than I already did, but whatever Shadow did was definitely right. Now, because 9 is a character exclusive to Sonic Prime, I didn't know what to expect from him. This may have helped the fact that he's an excellent character. Whereas most of the other variants of Sonic's friends behave in ways similar to their original counterparts, 9 is so far from Tails that it catches not just Sonic, but also me off guard. 9 was difficult to interpret. At first I thought, oh, he's not evil, he's just misunderstood. Then later on I learned, oh, no, he's evil. He's definitely evil. The fact that 9 is such a complex character is exactly what makes him so great. Most of the other characters are very simplistic, which isn't bad at all. In fact, I think this was done on purpose in order to help 9 stand out. What I find most fascinating about this character is that he started out the exact same way Tails did. The only difference is that Tails met Sonic early on in his life, but 9 didn't. 9 is who Tails would have become if he had never met Sonic. That thought is truly terrifying, because he would have ended up becoming the most powerful villain on the planet. I think the fact that 9 is just Tails without a Sonic in his life is truly brilliant. It shows just how much influence people can have on each other. If you have someone in your life who looks up to you, the way you live your life will affect that person one way or another. That's why we must be careful about how we live and who we look up to. And that's it. I don't really have much else to say about Sonic Prime. If you watched the show, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If and when another Sonic show comes around, I hope I enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Sonic Prime. Well, I'll see y'all later. God bless.